Welcoming back into the show, Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch. The website is judicialwatch.org. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming on.
Stacy, it is wonderful to be with you. Thank you very much.
Glad you're here. So we have a tough topic tonight because I'm still in a state of unbelief that people actually think it's valid to charge former President Trump with espionage crimes and all kinds of craziness. Meanwhile, we now know definitively, because there's a whistleblower, that the Biden family, among other cash payments that we're not even going to discuss here, that there's evidence now that each of the Biden dad and the son, the remaining son, took $5 million payments from foreign governments. And for what? I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Talk to us a little bit about this corruption in the Biden family.
There's an outrageous level of corruption. It's actually a criminal enterprise. The entire family has found ways to leverage the political offices of Joe Biden, whether he was senator, vice president, or now president. They have found ways to leverage Joe's position and his contacts and his knowledge and his influence to line their pockets with foreign cash. I'll give you one little snapshot, just one little tidbit that doesn't get anywhere near the amount of coverage that it should. And that is, while Joe was vice president for 8 years, we went and got travel records having to do with Joe's travel and the Wonder Boy, Hunter. And, not even for all 8, for 6 of the 8 years that Joe was vice president, we uncovered records showing that Hunter traveled with Joe on 411 trips. These are times when Air Force Two, took Joe around to whatever he was doing. 411 flights, 26 of which were to foreign countries. And of those 26 trips, 5 were to China. And so Wonder Boy Hunter is running around with Daddy, and you're supposed to believe, as the now illustrious president claims, that he had no knowledge whatsoever of what his son was doing concerning business. 411 flights, 26 to foreign countries, 5 of which were trips to China. So there's a little snapshot. There's a little peek at how Hunter and company leveraged Daddy to line their pockets with cash.
And again, these are not things like facts, not in evidence. This is the public record that you're quoting from about the plane trips.
Absolutely. Everything I'm telling you is not my opinion. It's not even my research. These are government documents turned over to us by court order because we have to sue the administration to compel them to abide by the Freedom of Information Act. And so a federal court ordered the administration to surrender those records detailing all of those flights.
So the evidence is all there. It's all out in the open. And now we're watching as Congress pieces it together with the help of this whistleblower. What do you expect to come out of it, especially now that they've indicted Trump again because they don't want him to run?
Yeah, I mean, this is so now we're seeing actual, real vulnerability or exposure for Biden and company. And I say in company because his brother's involved, the son Hunter, actually other family members. What it appears is that Hunter is really good at setting up a number of LLCs, limited liability companies. They're shell corporations. They're entities that exist on paper only. And there's been a series of kind of single transaction or 2 transaction banking activities associated with these LLCs. And this is, you may remember about a month ago, Representative Comer came out and said, hey, we've got all these suspicious activity reports from the Department of the Treasury where these corporations, all of a sudden $3 million shows up, $2,999,000 go out the door in a disbursement, and then the LLC ceases to exist, or they don't continue their registration. But it's been a flow through. It's been a channel to move money, and we don't really know who the people are. And it's registered in Delaware, so there's really no transparency or accountability. We just know that this legal entity existed. Money came in, money went out. Goodbye, good luck. That's it. And when the Treasury Department sees that, they have reason to believe that, hey, somebody's doing something nefarious here. Somebody's laundering money. And there appears to be, based upon what Mr. Comer and his colleagues have talked about, hundreds and hundreds of transactions like that. And, they're from places like Romania and Ukraine and China. And the beneficiaries appear to be Biden family members, to include in-laws, outlaws, grandkids, second cousins, wherever they can rope into the family operation. That's how they use it. And the entire operation, the entire criminal enterprise is leveraged against or in some way tied to the power and influence of Joe Biden, either as a senator, a vice president, or now president.
I mean, it's just, now imagine that they have all of this and that they would do something about this, that they would actually prosecute on that, because this isn't something that we've seen former presidents do, right? The influence peddling, that's not the improper storage of records, taking of this thing or that thing from the White House. I remember the first story that I remember from my adult life is the Clintons, when he was leaving the White House after his second term. He and Hillary took $200,000 worth of gifts, which doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but back when they did this 20 years ago, $200,000 was a big chunk of change. And they were gifts that were given to them while they were there, right? So that the value of the gifts was $200,000 as estimated by the National Archives. And what they did was, when they realized they'd taken these things with them, they asked the Clintons to bring them back. And so they brought some of it back, like in bulk. And then the rest of it, they kind of trickled back at their own leisure. And there was no arrest. There were no, there was nothing except a few news stories and people tut-tutting over how the Clintons were so persecuted. But they also took documents. I mean, there was a lot going on even back when it was Clinton, Bill, not Hillary. So this has been a continuing issue. This is the first time we've ever seen them do anything about it, and especially criminal charges, and especially accusing him of spying for a foreign entity.
My frustration point with respect to Mr. Comer and how he's pursuing Biden is that, they had to threaten the incredibly corrupt Christopher Wray, the FBI director, and say that they're going to initiate contempt of Congress proceedings unless he turned over this form. People will hear reference to something called an FD 1023. Mm-hmm. That's a government form that's filled out by FBI agents who are controlling a confidential human source, meaning what it sounds like, a guy who's giving them information, inside information in a criminal investigation or an intelligence operation. But this FD 1023 memorializes or details all the activities and the information from the source. And so Comer threatened Wray, and surprise, surprise, the FBI finally coughed up the record. But when they did so, they realized this is an unclassified document. So there's no super secret, oh my goodness, we can't tell anybody kind of stuff. This is simply a criminal report, a report of information from a guy who's a source. But the FBI even then wouldn't give it to the House Oversight Committee. They let them review it, which means held it out in front of them and let them read it. And they only did so in a SCIF, which is like a vault within a vault. It's a sensitive compartmented information facility. So when the government wants to tell secrets, they go into a SCIF. So they take an unclassified document that supposedly has all sorts of redactions, all kinds of blackout marks on it. They force them into a SCIF to make it seem like it's some super secret thing, which it's not. And then the FBI wouldn't even leave it with them. They took the document back with them. So they're playing all these little stupid monkey games with them and kind of jerking them around. Here's the problem with Comer. As soon as they said, okay, well, let you see the document, they called off the contempt hearings for Wray. This is once again the Republican Party, clutching defeat from the jaws of victory. Why they would ever let up pressure on Christopher Wray, why they would ever give a guy like him a pass is beyond me. They had him exactly where they wanted him, and they should have continued the pressure, because now we find out a week later, oh, guess what? There's 17 audio recordings that the FBI has that are basically like an attachment or an enclosure to the form from the confidential source. And of the 17 recordings, 15 are between Hunter and the source, and two of them are between then Vice President Biden and the source. Now, why in the world Comer would let Wray get away with not producing those to him, and why the House doesn't have their own copy of that report is beyond my imagination.
Wow.
But again, over and over again, the leadership of the Republicans lets these dirtballs, these unaccountable, arrogant people, slide away and, live another week or two to thumb their nose at them. So at some point, somebody needs to, at least in the Republican leadership, needs to actually act like an adult and be serious and pursue these people, because they're being lied to in a serial manner over and over and over again.
And all of the things that you're talking about, so they're out in the public domain. I can go to certain blogs I know of that have been blogging about these things for years, because Biden has been in D.C. for over 50 years. So it's not just that we know there are dead bodies. We know where they are. Everybody knows what he's been up to. And I think the most egregious part of the story, and there are so many egregious parts, Chris, but I guess the part that really just sticks in my throat whenever I think about it is Joe Biden having classified documents at the Penn Biden Center that Chinese nationals had access to. And then he had some documents that were, yes. And then he had some in a box in his garage near his Corvette. And we all know how safe garages are. I mean, how many times have you left the garage door open and went to bed and woke up the next morning and went, oh my gosh, thank you for your safety and protection, Lord, because I certainly left the garage door open last night. How many times has that happened? So how many times have you had somebody in your garage? You literally are trying to direct them to come through the front door. They see your garage doors open and they come into the garage and try to come in that door instead to walk into your kitchen. It's unbelievable how unsafe, how completely unsecure a garage is. Yet here we are talking about Joe Biden having classified documents in a box in his garage near the Corvette, like it being near the Corvette, Chris. That's what made it safe. I missed that part when I was getting my training on classified document storage when I was on active duty, about how all you needed was a classic Corvette nearby and the documents would be then considered to be safely and securely stored. I missed
secret.
that.
Yeah.
Missed it. Yeah.
But, we go into court tomorrow in the great state of Delaware. Judicial Watch is suing the University of Delaware because Joe Biden set up a little sweetheart deal where he took all of his documents from the time that he was senator from the great state of Delaware and also as vice president, and he turned over his papers to the University of Delaware to act as the archive, holding, I think it's something like 1,800 boxes of material. And so we asked unpleasant questions and said, hey, University of Delaware, by what authority are you holding on to these records and documents? And what do you have? We'd like to see them. They're public records. They're all documents from Joe Biden's U.S. government service. They're not some super secret corporate papers. They're not protected in any special way. And it's agreement between him and a public university in Delaware. There's a Delaware open records law. Let's see what he has. And the University of Delaware is fighting. They are terrified to let us get access to those Biden records. And so tomorrow, on the 14th, we have a hearing in the Supreme Court of Delaware where Judicial Watch is going to go in and try to break open for the American public all those papers that Joe Biden's been squirreling away for the last, well, his entire adult life, really. So, as you mentioned, for the past 50 years, and that he doesn't want the public to see. They're fighting like hell to make sure that nobody sees what's in there. And, you know, Lord knows how many classified documents are tucked into that batch.
So, on the same vein, do you think that this just could be my, I'm somebody's mom on the radio brain, but I kind of felt like the big announcement about Mike Pence, who is never Trump now, that he had some improperly stored files at his home. And so he opened his home up very graciously, very kindly, and it was all a big show. Come in, take a look in my home, search, and, feel free to spend as much time as you want here, and we'll just keep eating our dinner and drinking our tea. Go ahead, take a look. And they found, classified things that were improperly stored, and they confiscated them. And then we waited with bated breath for about 5 business days, and then the DOJ announced that they would not be further looking into Pence on the classified documents, and he made a big statement. Again, he's bleary-eyed and so contrite, and I can't believe I did this, and it was unintentional. Of course, I'll cooperate in any way possible, and I don't advocate for people to misstore documents, and certainly this is an embarrassing thing for me. And then he's off to the races. And then I saw on Twitter last night and over the weekend, lefties saying, well, if it's a witch hunt, if it's politically motivated, how is it someone who was appointed by Trump, and this one came from Trump's administration, and Pence, he wasn't prosecuted for his documents, even though he had improperly stored documents as well. And so they go down this big list of how everyone who's doing this to Trump is somehow there because of him. A law that he passed, that he signed, was passed under his administration. He signed into law about document storage and what the penalties would be for improper use and storage. I feel like I'm being gaslit here, Chris. First of all, Mike Pence is never Trump, and he's only being let go free because he is never Trump. If he was a true dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter and a confidant of President Trump, he would be getting prosecuted too. That's the way I see it.
Right. Pence is a non-entity, and his candidacy is nothing but it's a fundraising publicity stunt. Pence has exactly zero chance of ever being president of the United States. And I realize there's people out there that love him. That's great. Have at it. But the notion that he has any chance whatsoever of being a Republican nominee is a joke. And the notion that he would be able to go toe-to-toe and win is equally a joke. So he's going to go through the motions, and this is really, like I said, it's a fundraising operation that he will take into his retirement. And so, that's all I'm going to say about Pence. And the notion, he got caught, and he's contrite, and he's a creature of the Washington establishment. He certainly is not the swamp draining sort of anti-DC character that Trump is, and his history will write itself, and I'll just leave Pence there. Here, let me explain to you what the situation is with Trump and this indictment. And nobody knows more about this than Judicial Watch, and I say that because not out of arrogance or not out of pride, but out of the fact that we are the one and only organization in the entire United States that has a legal finding, a court case ruling from the U.S. District Court in the District of Columbia on the matter of the Presidential Records Act. There's only one court case. It's ours. It's from 12 years ago. And I hate to say this, but it's true. We lost. We lost the case. And the reason why we lost is the key interesting part when you apply it to Trump. So way back when, in 2009, Taylor Branch is a historian, and he's doing an oral history of the Clinton administration with Bill Clinton. They sat down something like 70 or 80 times over the course of his administration, and they did interviews. They went back and forth. Bill Clinton would sit there and talk about the various decisions he was making. They discussed classified information. Bill Clinton let Taylor Branch sit in secretly on phone calls and record them. And so he had access, incredible access to the Clinton presidency. When the presidency was over, Bill Clinton took the audio tapes that he had from these interviews and he tucked them in his papers and he left the White House. And this is why it's called the sock drawer case. Literally, Bill Clinton took the tapes and he hid them. He tucked them away in his sock drawer. Anybody listening to President Trump earlier today heard him talk about the sock case or the Clinton sock case. That is a Judicial Watch lawsuit. So we sue because we say, hey, look, those are records that the National Archives should have. It's part of the Clinton presidency, and we want access to them. We go into court. We get Judge Amy Berman Jackson as our judge. This litigation goes on and on for months and months and months. We finally get our day in court in front of Judge Amy Berman Jackson, and she comes back in a written opinion and says that the President of the United States has absolute, unreviewable authority to take anything he wants when he leaves the White House. Absolute, unreviewable authority to take anything he wants when he leaves the White House. If it's classified, it's not declassified. If it's a government record, it's now his personal papers. And the National Archives and the rest of the U.S. government has absolutely no authority whatsoever to go after anything the president takes. And they cannot get in an argument with the president over whether it's a presidential record or a personal record. NARA can't do it, the National Archives and Records Administration can't do it, and Congress can't do it. It is an absolute authority of the president when he leaves the White House. And that has been the law of the land of the United States of America for the last 12 years. And Bill Clinton got a 100% pass on that case. He gets to keep whatever he wants. However, Donald Trump gets the exact 180 degrees polar opposite treatment with regard to his papers and what he took out of the White House. And that disparity of treatment and the sort of insane, obsessive fixation of all the anti-Trumpers and the Biden political operatives is the shame of the Biden administration, and it's the thing that is tearing up this country tonight.
Wow. So precedent is on his side. I remember quoting this case on the air. After the raid at Mar-a-Lago, I was quoting this case. Now, so I'm not sure if I remembered at the time this is from Judicial Watch. My memory is not good enough to go back to right after the Mar-a-Lago raid. I just know I was in a rage and yelling and screaming into my microphone about how this is unprecedented. How do you raid his house for things that he declassified? As a president, he has the ultimate authority to do that, unlike vice presidents who don't have the authority to do that. I'm speaking about Pence and Biden in this case. So,
right.
First off, I don't think you're over tooting of the horn because, as I've said to the listeners many times since our fateful, we were your guests at Judicial Watch annual meetings. We were at Trump Doral. We saw the speakers. I sat through the panels and heard all of the experts talking. There is no other organization that does more on behalf of protecting the law and liberty when it comes to this type of a thing that you're talking about. Your expertise there, it's unmatched. Judicial Watch is always there. They're either there in the amicus briefs, they're there on the filing side, they're there. Judicial Watch is always there when it comes to protecting the law and bringing cases that restore liberty to the American life. So this is not an exaggeration. So tell us as we close out here, Chris, and we'll have you back again to continue to keep us updated here. What would you do? What would you recommend if you were advising the president and his legal team on this? how are they going to approach this? Because I saw, I think it was Matt Whitaker from AFPI on Newsmax saying that this case will actually probably be put on hold and won't be actually worked through until after the 2024 election.
I'm not sure about the timing, but I can tell you that in previous legal briefs, President Trump's legal team has made reference to this case, the Judicial Watch case. It's Judicial Watch versus National Archives and Records Administration. They've talked about it because it is the only case that deals with the Presidential Records Act and the president taking records and documents that arguably could be decided to be, oh, no, wait a minute, that should be part of the record, and the judge making this very, very strong absolute statement about the president's authority when he's leaving office to take whatever he wants. Folks that really want to kind of drill down on this, the attorney on our staff who actually, it was his case, and he argued it and he lost it. The attorney on the case has written an opinion piece that is in the Wall Street Journal right now. It was posted this evening at 7:08 Eastern Time. It's called Trump's Boxes and Clinton's Sock Drawer. And the attorney is Michael Bekesha. And my colleague Michael has written an article, and he even says that, when it comes to these records, he wrote, I know because I'm the lawyer who lost the Clinton sock drawer case. And he goes through and explains the whole thing. And so I encourage your listeners to get a hold of that article. Again, it's in the Wall Street Journal right now, Trump's Boxes and Clinton's Sock Drawer. It lays it out. He quotes from the finding of the case. It is very, very strong and persuasive. And anybody who's kind of hard over and foaming at the mouth about how, Trump is bad and Trump is wrong, you read this case and it will stop them dead in their tracks. It really makes you wonder about how the public is being propagandized and manipulated on this entire question. This story, blows the narrative of Jack Smith out of the water, because Jack Smith not once in his indictment discusses the Presidential Records Act. And that, my friend, is the governing legal authority on the president's documents, not this contrived argument from the 1917 Espionage Act. And I say that as a former counterintelligence officer for the Army. I've done counterespionage cases. I know what the Espionage Act says. I'm not guessing at this. And so between my past life experience and my last 24 years at Judicial Watch, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. And anybody who looks at this seriously will really get a better insight as to how President Trump is actually the crime victim in this case. And for more information, folks can go to judicialwatch.org, O-R-G, judicialwatch.org, and can see all the different work that we've done.
Very important. And all of what you discussed is linked over at the show notes over at stacyontheright.com. It's always a pleasure to have you here, my friend. So glad that you've made it back from Hungary. Adventures to had and more to be had. Thank you for joining me tonight.
We're glad to be home, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show.
Yeah, good to have you here. We'll talk soon. All my love to Shay. We will talk to Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch, routinely about this case in the future. Thank you, sir, for joining us. The website is judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch.org.